Thank you, Mr. Chappelear. I appreciate it very much. I'm very pleased to be able to make this presentation to the Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, and I appreciate your trust in me and asking me to present this, because to me, emotional intelligence is the key to success for the next level of leadership. We really have changed in the years that I've been working, which is adding up to be more and more and more every time I look back. But the changes that I've seen from watching my father work and then watching my earlier career, and as my career has evolved, the desire to connect emotionally with people has actually become more and more powerful. It hasn't been more and more important. It's just we've just finally become more and more aware of how powerful it can be. If you'll notice that the most powerful relationships in your lives are the ones that you are emotionally engaged in. If we are emotionally engaged with our families or our spouses, or if we played sports between our coaches, or the people who are most important in our lives, the ones that are the most powerful connections are the ones that we are emotionally engaged to. And that's why we've changed. We used to have a slogan in our company that was called Change, Permanent and Positive. And now we've changed that to Connecting Emotion to Knowledge. Because I find that most everybody I work with is emotionally intelligent. Is intelligent. They just need to find a way to connect to the emotional feelings they have inside and find appropriate ways to understand those, read them, and connect better with others. So let's get going. I think that my desire today is to have each attendee be able to have practical steps when you finish with this webinar to be able to actually create some changes beginning today. So please think of that as you're going forward and create questions that if this is not something that is clear in your mind, or there's a step that isn't as clear as you'd like it to be, or you simply don't know where to start, please ask that question. I'm happy to answer it as best I can. All right. Let's go with the definition of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the capability of individuals to recognize their own emotions, the emotions of others, to decide between those emotions, to be able to label them and use them to guide positive behavior. Now you see that I said positive behavior because many times we let those emotions guide negative behavior. We let anger, resentment, judgments of past or present experiences carry those emotions forward into the present moment and drive our behavior. I mean, how often do we find ourselves in situations where we misread a situation, where we think someone is angry, or we think someone is jealous, or we think someone is unprepared, and yet they find that they are not angry. My son had a tendency to exhibit what we considered anger when he was really being frustrated. And when he realized that he was simply being frustrated, it changed the way he reacted, and it changed the way everyone around him reacted as well. And it's the same way with people who are unprepared. I find that many times people I mistakenly think are unprepared are people who are just uncomfortable with making presentations or are uncomfortable speaking in front of others. And when we're able to step back from that, help them with that issue, and then bring them back to the table again, they make a much more powerful presentation than they ever did before. And it's simply because we have been able to recognize the emotions, decide which ones are most appropriate, and guide people towards positive behavior. All right. An individual with high emotional intelligence can manage their impulses, communicate effectively with others, manage change well, solve problems, and build rapport in tense situations. These are really key components of leadership today. We are being asked as leaders throughout organizations to do more and more with less and less, both here in the U.S. and certainly now in the Middle East with economic changes that have caused tightening of budgets and changes in the perspective and the way in which we go to work every day. We find that emotions can be running higher than normal. Our communications and our emotions must stay open and stable to be able to maintain rapport. And to move an organization forward, Emotional intelligence is considered to be twice as important as traditional intelligence in being able to drive organizational improvement and personal improvement. This, like everything else I do in my work, I try to approach holistically, because if we aren't balancing our personal lives and our professional lives, I tend to find that the clients that I work with have problems in both. So please make sure that we're attending. This is not simply how to manipulate my coworkers better. This is an honest and valid way in which we can understand and relate to our emotions, and how to get the best out of them. At the executive level, emotional intelligence is considered to be the most important skill set in 90% of the top C-level executives. So it's very important to understand that. These are the four components that we will be discussing today in relationship to ways to get a grip on emotional intelligence. There will be the two columns on the two boxes, on the left are what we do for ourselves. The two boxes on the right are the things that we do with others. Self-awareness, awareness of our own emotions, as I said a few minutes ago, an honest self-assessment of how we're feeling and how we're behaving. Sometimes that's a real hard thing for us to do because we feel as if we're justified in our behavior, and we have to be very careful about justification. Sometimes can create a tremendous amount of pressure and anger because we feel as if our position is certainly justified. People should be doing what we tell them to do. Having a sense of self-confidence, being able to be candid with other people, ourselves and other people. These things add up to become a very positive and powerful skill set that has a positive effect on others. Self-management is our ability to exhibit our own emotional self-control, simply to think before taking action. Our ability to maintain a sense of adaptability. Sometimes once emotions take over, adaptability goes completely out the window. When we are able to exhibit emotional self-control, think before acting, we have a tendency also to maintain a sense of optimism and move us and take the steps it takes to be in the forefront of positive change, taking initiative to maintain these emotional connections. Social awareness helps us expand our sense of empathy, thinking about and understanding other people, whether it be organizational awareness, understanding what's going on emotionally within our organizations. We should be paying attention to the sense of service that we are exhibiting. How are we helping people in our organizations become more successful? It allows us to build deeper connections with other people. In relationship management, it allows us to, it allows us to encourage and develop other people successfully, both intellectually and emotionally. Because as we begin to grow emotionally in our processes, then we begin to help develop other people to understand the same things. We also become, whether we like it or not, as we move up in organizations, we become the person that people look to as far as how well is he or how well is she maintaining a sense of equanimity, or how easily do they get upset, or how well maintained are they emotionally. These are all issues that people will look to us to see how well we handle it. How well do we accept change? Because how well we do it will definitely have a direct relationship on our relationships, both personally and professionally. When we're able to build strong relationships, we can handle conflict effectively. And by conflict effectively, I don't mean eliminating conflict. There is nothing wrong with conflict in organizations. The important component of that is understanding how to keep conflict positive and mutually respectful. I want people challenging the way things are done. I want people challenging the processes that we go through, because people doing the processes understand how to do the processes better than people supervising. And so if we encourage feedback and even challenges to the processes, it will be an excellent way in which we can help improve and accelerate our success. But if we let conflict get out of hand, it drives things down very, very quickly. And finally, good relationship management allows us to create collaboration and to be encouraging and to be successful in the way in which we move people and ourselves forward on a daily basis. These four components of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management require us to become. And the reason that I phrase it like this is because if you think about when you ask somebody, we always ask them, what do you want to be? And the thing is, we should be asking ourselves is, what are we becoming? Because everyone wants to be. I want to be successful. I want to be a great this, or I want to be a great that, or I want to be a great husband, or I want to be a great spouse or son, or whatever it may be. But what are we doing to become those things? What actions are we taking on a daily basis to become what we will eventually want to think that we are being? Because becoming is where all the work is. To become a successful leader, it takes continuous learning, continuous expansion of our thoughts and our feelings, to be willing to move forward, to be engaging in things that are complicated or in things that are difficult, but to continue to move forward until we practice new behaviors frequently enough so that they become permanent. So think about that today. If you're struggling with emotional intelligence or anything else, what is it that you would like to be? And if you can identify what that is, then ask yourself, so what am I doing to become that? Because as we create changes and as we move forward, what happens is that something always holds us back. We could spend, excuse me, we could spend days discussing the brain and its issues, but today we will just simply work on the thing that I find in working with my clients, and it doesn't make any difference what part of the world they're in. The thing that seems to hold them back more than any other thing is fear. The fear of failure, the fear of looking weak, the fear of losing control. If you look up on the Wikipedia page, there are over 1,000 specific fears that are listed there. So on and on and on. Fear keeps us frozen in place. We try very hard on a daily basis to make things, to make changes, but if we don't pay attention to the emotions that drive us, the fundamental emotions that drive us, we will never be able to move forward, because everyone I've met traveling all over the world makes some sort of resolution each year, whether it be a New Year's resolution or a business a year resolution, or whether it's sitting down with family and creating changes. The thing is that we make these resolutions, but they last only a few days or a few weeks at best. And that's because old behavior is very difficult to overcome, because fear holds us back from being willing to look like we are just trying to figure out things. And regardless of where you are in life, you're going to be trying to figure out new things, because if you want to be successful, you need to continue to grow. And if you're going to continue to grow, you're going to be at the beginning of certain things. When we were children, we tried to walk, we stood up, we fell down. We stood up, we fell down. And we did it again and again and again. And if we let fear of failure hold us back, we would all still be sitting on the floor waiting to figure out how to walk. And that's not what we want to do. So we need to understand what it is that does hold us back. Our ego is something that tells us that we should be good at all of these things. We should be capable of all these things. And it drives the instinctual part of our brain to generate a sense of fear. And fear resides in the most basic part of our brains. And so this is why you'll find that people who are throwing out and creating a sense of fear have a tendency to get people to pay more attention than people that are generating a sense of hope. Because hope is in the limbic system. Hope is in the emotional and the feelings section of the brain. And when we began as human beings, we lived almost exclusively in the instinctual part of our brains. We needed to eat, we needed to survive, we needed to reproduce. Then as we began to get more developed, we became more intellectual. We became more rational. We became more thinking. We put aside the instinctive parts and grew in what we thought was the right capacity. We grew in our rational, logical components of our brain. But really and truly, the way in which that we need to grow more effectively as leaders is to access the limbic system, access the emotional or feelings. Remember I said at the beginning, to understand our feelings, to be able to connect with those feelings, manage them well. It allows us to solve problems and build rapport. If instead of jumping back and forth between the instinctual part of our brain and the rational part of our brain, what we need to really do is try to work on a process that allows us to minimize this instinctual process and think about emotional and rational connection. We think it and we feel it, or we feel it and we think it. And we take a look at whether this is a logical process, whether it's something that we can bring forward. Can we encourage other people to move forward? These are situations, you remember I said a little bit earlier that these are situations that will cause us to be uncomfortable. For us to move from expressing intellect and knowledge to expressing emotion, combined with that intellect and knowledge, will make us feel uncomfortable because it is new behavior, and all new behavior is uncomfortable. So I remember when I was younger, I had cut my arm, and it affected the nerves and the muscles. And it took me almost 6 months to be able to write with a pen and a pencil again. And I can assure you that during that 6-month period at the beginning, writing with my opposite hand was very uncomfortable. In workshops, I'll simply have people come in and stop, and within 5 minutes, I'll ask them to get up and move and sit in a different place. Just that amount of change makes people feel uncomfortable. They feel as if, well, this is my seat. I shouldn't have to move to a different seat. And that sense of ownership becomes very quick, and the idea of trying to encourage change makes people feel very uncomfortable and off-putting. So we have to understand that feelings really drives behavior. And the more that we can connect with those feelings, the better it'll be for all of us. So the first step in this 6-step process is willingness. Willingness is the oil in the engine that makes things move forward. Just like oil in an engine, willingness is a very small component, but without it, nothing will work. You have to be willing to try new things. You have to be willing to take a look around and see where you are in need of growth, where your changes need to come from. And you have to understand that being uncomfortable is a big component of willingness. Willingness to try new things, to find new teachers, to teach us new lessons. The willingness to see ourselves as we really are. So, I mean, how does willingness help with this idea of self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship management? It allows us to step forward and learn how to know ourselves, the willingness to look inward. How are we behaving? How are we feeling? Are we letting our negative feelings drive us forward? How can we set those negative feelings aside? How can we understand how to tie the way we feel with the goals that we're trying to achieve? It allows us to choose the feelings that we want, to choose ourselves, know ourselves, choose ourselves, and finally, to give ourselves. The willingness to give myself over to the appropriate feeling. Sometimes it means that we have to fight against the first feelings. It may be that the old feelings come back. You remember I told you earlier about making resolutions. We make resolutions and then they fall by the wayside because old behaviors are very powerful. And we have to have the willingness to set those aside, the old behaviors, because if you've been trying something for 6 months, but your old behavior has been 20 years, the 20-year behavior is going to beat the 6-month behavior every time, and especially when you're under stress. So what emotional intelligence will do through the sense of willingness is to allow us to look inward, to feel and choose appropriately, and to be able to give yourself appropriately over to those feelings. You know, think about it. Are your emotions moving you towards your personal and professional goals? If the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, then what are you doing? Remember, what are you becoming? Are you becoming more balanced? Are you becoming more centered? What are you willing to try? What are you willing to do to become a person that's able to handle situations more effectively than today? Willingness allows you to open up your mind, as I said before, to know yourself, to choose yourself, to give yourself. Open up your mind and see things from a new perspective. To allow us to try new things, to get new teachers. If we're trying to fix new situations with old thinking, it's going to be very, very difficult. If we haven't been able to figure out a solution in the past, more than likely, if you want to figure out a solution in the present to move you positively into the future, you're going to have to add new knowledge. Try new things, things that make you uncomfortable. Find new teachers, whether it be a mentor, whether it be a book or a tape. We'll talk a little bit in a minute about action, and it's very important that action be the key ingredient here, because willingness is important, but action is what moves you forward. But action is number 6, so let's get to that in a second. Einstein's saying still holds true, and that is, Einstein said that doing the same things again and again and expecting a different result is insanity. So let's try some new solutions for issues that we find are struggling with today, instead of just trying the same thing but harder or faster or quicker or more frequently. Let's try something completely different. Let's try leading with our emotions instead of our intellect. And as I said earlier, for willingness will keep everything going smoothly, because willingness will allow you to step back and relax when things aren't going as well as they will, or as well as they should, or at least as well as you expect them to be. I mean, I find ourselves putting tremendous pressure on ourselves to be successful, and yet we haven't given ourselves the time to move forward. All right, the second step today will be quiet time. And quiet time allows us to set and create clarity in our day. Almost every component of quiet time relates directly to self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship management. With self-awareness is the ability to recognize your emotions as they happen and understand the general tendencies for responding. Okay, if you're taking some sort of quiet time and you're setting an intention, one of the wonderful things about my friends in the Middle East who have specific times for prayer every day is that they're able to take that time, say their prayers, relax their minds, open their hearts, and then reset their intentions for the next hour or 2 or 3. Are we using that time to not only connect ourselves better spiritually, but are we using that time to connect ourselves as effectively emotionally? If you don't use a frequent prayer time, are you using quiet time to break out the day, maybe at the beginning of the day or the end of the day? Many times I will use the beginning of the day simply to look out at the day ahead of me, look at the things that are going to be happening, or at least that I hope that will be happening today, and I ask myself, how would I like to be perceived in those situations? And the issue for me then is when I'm in those situations, I'm able to take a look back and say, see, I'm handling myself as I expected to or as I wanted to. But if I've set a path for myself, I can also notice if I'm not on the path. I can notice if I've moved away from what my expectation or what my desire in the way in which I want it to be. So for me, a path is important, and quiet time allows you to set that path. The most important component of a path is that it allows you to notice when you're not on it, because you've set an expectation for yourself and now you have something to follow. Quiet time allows you to be able to build some space into your day or into your life where you can observe the situations that are happening to you and not so much be engaged in the situations that are happening to you. So you're able to keep your emotional calm, keep your relationship strong. In just 5 minutes, 2 or 3 times a day, you can create a path that will move you forward in a positive and very strong way. If you try it, you will be amazed at how simple it is. Take 30 seconds before you pick up a telephone, or 30 seconds before you walk into a meeting, and ask yourself, how am I doing emotionally? How would I like to be perceived in this meeting? Will I be even-handed, and will my temperament be positive or negative before I go in here? Reset your thinking, reset your emotions, and you will never, ever be disappointed. Number 3 is being service-focused to others, because nothing changes our focus faster than focusing on service to others. We end up with the law of unexpected benefits with service, because in emotional intelligence, those 4 components we talked about earlier, if working on any of those 4 components will strengthen the other 3 as well. So understand that. It is very important to be committed to focusing on strengthening and supporting other people in our lives. And as we do that, our lives get better and stronger as well. So how does service help with these pieces? Service, for me, is the price that we pay for the life that we're given. We're given a life, and our responsibility is to be of service to others, whether that be personal or professional. You remember I said earlier that this is a holistic idea. The idea here is that we can't be strong at home and weak at work, or weak at home and strong at work. We need to be balanced, centered, and focused, and caring and supportive in all components of our lives. All right? The sizes and shapes of service are wide, broad. They could be as simple as calling someone by their name instead of, hey you, come here a second. Call them by their name. Somebody. Elevator door. I mean, one of the things I joke about in webinar and seminars is, if you ever notice when you step into an elevator, you'll notice that the second most worn out button in an elevator is the closed door button, because everybody jumps in and pushes the closed door button rather than waiting or looking outside and seeing if anybody can jump on an elevator. You'd be amazed that as you begin to use positive service towards others, how much differently you begin to feel about them and how much differently you feel about yourself. In my executive leadership programs, I use a redefinition of the idea of what is our job. My feeling is that our job is to strengthen and ensure the success of the people who work for us. That's our job, to ensure the success of the people who work for us. It isn't to sell anything or write anything or measure anything specifically. It is simply to focus on the success of those we work with. Because if you think about it, I'm working right now in a large hospital in the supply chain program. What I'm trying right now is to get them to understand how connecting success to each other and being focused on the success of each other will help them much more effectively in being successful themselves. And so far, it's been an amazing change of mindset, mood, morale. It has all changed dramatically simply by changing their focus from what's in it for me to what's in it from me. What am I putting into these situations? What am I putting in versus what am I getting out? So today I would challenge anybody that's on this attendee list, if you want to see how quickly and easily things can get done, reach out today and be of service to someone. Say hello, hold an elevator door, hold a door. Ask someone how they're feeling. Make good eye contact. Be a little bit more open emotionally and see how it makes a difference in the way you feel about yourself and how easily and better connected you will be to them. The next component is love and forgiveness. And for me, I want to very quickly say that with love and forgiveness, you create a sense of compassion with others, cooperation with others, and realize and create a much more powerful sense of engagement within both your staff and in the connections of your personal life as well. Now, I want to use the definition of love that I wrote in the Daily Six, and that is, love should be defined as understanding the needs of others and taking those needs and making them as important to me as my own needs. So understanding the needs of others and treating their needs as important as my own. Okay? And that's it. And that, to me, is effective, whether it be a spouse, a child, a boss, a coworker, a subordinate, anyone in your life that you can reach out and emotionally connect so that you understand what their needs are, what are the drivers in their lives. And the more effectively you can connect your needs and their needs, the more effectively you'll be able to encourage, engage, and motivate them forward. And forgiveness, for me, forgiveness is giving up all hope of a different yesterday. I'll say that again because sometimes this throws people off. Giving up all hope of a different yesterday. Okay, yesterday will not change no matter how hard we work at trying to make it change, how long we carry these resentments and angers and judgments around. Let go of the past and do not bring it into the present. The present generates enough stress on its own. Do not allow yesterday's actions to create today's behaviors. Okay? So feeling connected to each other and understanding their needs and letting go of previous angers, judgments, relationship issues will help make this moment today positive, balanced, and peaceful. Number 5 is gratitude. And gratitude, more than anything else, brings us into the present moment. One of the workshops that I do is a mindfulness workshop, and it focuses exclusively on being in the present moment. That's where we're able to use forgiveness to its most powerful and effective way, is to let go of the past, even let go of the future. Just be here now. So we need to be able to do that. And we need to find a sense of gratitude. When we change the relationships in our lives from proud of or just having, if I'm married, it's one thing. If I'm grateful to have the wife that I'm married to, it's a much different relationship. If I have a job or I have a career, or I'm grateful for my job or my career, it changes the relationship dramatically. All right, so how does gratitude help us with these 4 components? First of all, we need to be grateful for all things at all times. Good things and even difficult things, bad things. I find that I have talked to people all over the world and asked them if they've ever had situations that they assumed were difficult at one time or terrible at one time in their lives, and had it ever turn around to be much different. If you ever read my book, you'll find that one of the most difficult components of my life happened, I guess, 25 years or so ago now, where I had a business that just was decimated through an economic downturn. But it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because within a year or two I was able to open and change my perspective to open this company, where I was able to start working with other companies all over the world to help create positive changes within those companies. And if that change had not occurred 25 years ago, I would not be here today. I would still be doing what I was doing. I still would be focused the same way I was then, and the way I was then was focused on my success. And the level of peacefulness and happiness that I experience today is dramatically different than that I experienced 25 years ago. So it is amazing that when we become grateful for all things at all times, it really does change our emotional strengths, our emotional intelligence, and our ability to connect with others. We are the lenses of our lives. Just remember that. If we go to the movie theater and we look at the screen, or we're looking at a television and either the movie or the TV is out of focus, we don't try to go up and figure out a way to just bang on the television or go up to the screen and try to figure out how to fiddle with the screen. We actually have to go to the projector if we're in a movie theater, or we have to get to the tuner. And we are the tuners of our lives. We are the lenses of our lives. How we feel inside translates to the lives that we live outside. If we're feeling stressful and angry and frustrated, then the life that we live will be stressful and angry and frustrated. And so to create these changes on the outside, we first must focus on how are we doing on the inside. And that's what gratitude will do for us. Sitting down to make a gratitude list will change your sense of perspective more quickly than anything I have ever thought of. Write out a list of things that you're proud of and simply change that list of 5 or 6 things to things that make me happy. And you'll notice that your behavior changes. between proud and grateful and happy. The blacksmith's truth that I talk about here is simply that in the days when blacksmiths were abounding in every town and city in the world, they made steel stronger by heating it in a forge and plunging it into cold water, and then heating it on the forge and plunging it into cold water, and back and forth and back and forth. And the colder the water and the warmer the fire, the stronger the steel became. And that's how tempered steel became so powerful. And I think that's the same thing that we experience in our own personal lives, is as difficulties in our lives, that space between the difficult times and the good times strengthens our spirit, strengthens our character, and strengthens the way in which we relate and commit ourselves to working with other people. So remember, difficulties in our lives can build tremendous character and tremendous opportunities if we don't let ourselves be driven by fear. Finally is action, and action is required to make anything work. Action is what underpins all of the Daily Six. Action allows us to move from IQ to EQ, from knowledge to emotion. Action, as was with Edward Deming, the genius behind systems planning, understand that emotional intelligence is a system, and it's a commitment to permanent positive change. Deming's concept was plan, do, check, and act. And that's exactly the same thing that we talked about with these 4 components. We plan how we would like to do it, we take a look and we put it into action, we check to make sure that we're on the right path, and then we act again. We have to remember that we get judged by our behaviors. We judge ourselves by our own personal intentions, but no one else knows our intentions. They can only judge us by our behaviors. So make sure that we're connecting our emotions, our intentions, and our behaviors so that it comes out consistently as we move forward each day. So how does action help us with these 4 components? First of all, we have to understand that we were taught that knowledge is power. I don't know about you, but that was something that my father drilled into me. It required great education, extensive learning, extensive knowledge. But knowledge is really not power. What knowledge is knowledge. How we express that knowledge is where the power comes from. If all we're doing is expressing knowledge, people will hear it, but will they react to it? I don't know. They may not. If it's important to them, they may listen some. But I can assure you that if you use the knowledge and connect it to other people through an emotional trigger, if you get them to understand it, how it will be value to them, how it will be important to them, how it might make huge differences in their lives. So rather than simply expressing knowledge, if we express the value of the knowledge, that's where the true power comes from. We also felt that emotions were feelings, words that we would use, whether it be caring, loving, whatever it might be. The important thing to understand is emotions are not just feelings. They are the actions that we take to ensure that the people who we talk to about our emotions understand how we really feel. I can tell someone they're important to me, but I can treat them in a way that they are absolutely sure that they are not important to me. So what I say is important, but how I act is much more important. When I was running around loose, running companies and sort of being a big shot, or attempting to be a big shot, my wife calls it that I became in recovery. I'm a recovering big shot. And that the idea here was simply that what was important to me was the most important thing. And I have learned over time that as I ensure the success of other people in my life, that my life becomes more balanced, more centered, more peaceful, and more successful. So why is all this worth the effort that we talk about here? It's worth the effort that we talk about because if you look at this simple chart, okay, this is a worldwide scores based on performance outcomes directly related to emotional intelligence scores. As you can see, there is no doubt here that as your emotional intelligence goes up, as it moves from left to right. The performance outcome scores go up as they move from bottom to top. I mean, look at that line. That is a direct straight line from about 40 to about 120, directly related to the emotional intelligence scores. And this is true across the board. Across the board. Take a look at these things. These are the top organizational challenges. These are department functions and bottlenecks. The leaders and key contributors are not ready for the next level of leadership. Inability to replicate great culture, low teamwork performance, conflict and differences between key peoples, ineffective communication processes, a lack of strategic differentiation to achieve any kind of an advantage, whether it be internal or external. We keep trying new initiatives, and our people are really struggling with initiative overload. This is a good idea. Well, let's try this as a new idea. A lack of discipline or accountability. The number one common organizational issue is a lack of organizational or operational alignment. Every single one of those can be improved through emotional intelligence. I have a workshop pretty much on every single one of these organizational challenges, because these are the issues my clients come to me with. These are the issues that I build solutions for them. And I can assure you that in every single one of these workshops or seminars, there is a direct correlation between the daily 6, which is the 6 components we've talked about today, and emotional intelligence, the idea behind self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. If you want to improve those, these components will all get better. I mean, think about it from a practical standpoint. This is the issue I have with a lot of people, is they think, well, this really isn't that practical. I mean, how I'm feeling is not that important. It's not that big a deal. Whether it be strategic planning or thinking, interdepartmental communications, diversity, training and talent management, whether you want to improve your engagement, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit board and you want to improve the way the board governs the organization, budget challenges, anything at all can be improved dramatically with emotional intelligence. It makes things move so much better. It's the grease that moves an organization forward smoothly. It eliminates the squeaks and the kinks in the systems. It eliminates people being angry and frustrated and carrying that resentment forward into the next day. It eliminates so much of the animosity that's held, whether it be voiced or not voiced, in meetings. So please make sure that you consider that as you move forward. At the very end of the slides here, which I will, let me skip, actually I can just skip over that, go to it quickly. I put 2 different action plans in here for you. Action plan 1, action plan 2. And these will be for you to use any way you'd like. Just things you'd like to start doing, things you'd like to stop doing, things that you'd like to keep doing but do differently. And new ideas and new things you'd like to learn more about. And then where do you start? Where are you now? What's changed? What will the future be different when you do these things? And how will you begin to ingrain emotional intelligence into your life? If you do those things, I think you'll be amazed at how much more easy, how much more effective, and how much more powerful and peaceful and productive your day will be. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, thank you very much for a very, very emotionally intelligent presentation. Folks, we are now for question and answers. If you have any questions, you could put it in the question box or you could raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on your console, so if you click on it, we will be able to unmute you so you can have a chat, audio chat with the speaker. Let me go straight to the question box. We have a first one from Brother Rashid Anwar. The question is, I don't expect becoming emotionally intelligent overnight. Are 3 levels of getting emotionally. Can we achieve it without a professional help?
Well, of course, as a professional, I would say, oh, no, you absolutely need a professional. No, emotional intelligence is something that you could definitely do yourself. It's not a problem. it is a little easier to have somebody holding you accountable to the goals than it is doing it yourself. It's also can save you some difficulties in making mistakes along the way. But absolutely, there are dozens of books on emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman's book that's about, now I guess it's about 20 years old, called Emotional Intelligence, is probably the most popular book that's out there. But there are all kinds of simple steps in moving forward on emotional intelligence. And yes, there are different levels that you can achieve. There are assessment tests that you can take to determine how emotionally intelligent you are, so that you can also determine what you need to focus on and how you need to focus. But while it may be a little easier to have someone help or coach you through the process, or you know, when I do this workshop, it takes 2 full days. So you can understand we sort of condensed it into 40 minutes. It's not the kind of detail that you would normally get in a more thorough presentation, but this is a good overview. You should be able to take this and begin to move forward on your own. Use those 2 action plans. I think you'll find that they'll help you. Another question?
Yes, we have another one from Amar Habiz. The question is, thanks for the great presentation. Could you please elaborate more in how to change a habit? Like, for example, being too sensitive.
Well, I tell you, the thing that I find the easiest, and habit is hard to change. Remember I said earlier, if you're working on something for 6 months, your old behavior is 20 years or 30 years, or in my case, maybe 40 years ingrained. It's very difficult. So you have to be willing to understand that it's hard, and you have to be willing to give yourself the credit it takes that you're trying. One of the things that I talked about earlier was sort of setting this path in quiet time, thinking about yourself not so much as not being sensitive, because if you want to work on changing something, don't work on not doing something. Work on doing something different. So let's think about it. Think about sensitive can be thought of in a number of different ways, but let's just think that the opposite of sensitive is confident. All right? What I would be focused on is, how can I be more confident, rather than how can I stop being sensitive? That gives you a path to follow much more clearly. It's much easier to try to be something than to stop being something else. So work on whatever you would define as sensitive. Try to come up with what you consider the opposite of that, and work on strengthening that skill. And each day when you practice a little quiet time, ask yourself, how well am I doing moving forward on that skill? At the end of the day, make sure you give yourself credit for trying. Give yourself credit for the times in which you were able to successfully achieve that, versus what we have a tendency to do, especially the more successful people have a tendency to focus on the things that they did not do well during the day. So at the end of the day, when you look back and you're trying to build some new habits, give yourself credit for the changes that you were able to ingrain. I hope that helps. Another question?
Yes, we have another one from Mr. Azha Musalli. The question is, okay, this was more like a comment about the recorded webinar version. Yes, it will be available, and we'll share the link. The question from Haifa Saeed Al-Hamari. The question is, how to deal with the toxic jealousy from a coworker, despite how many times you ignored their mean actions?
Well, this is one of the things that is difficult. The thing that we have to understand is that we have no control over other people. This is usually, if I'm in a seminar, I'll ask people, you know, if we want to think about how well we control other people, does anybody have teenage children? You know, how well do we control them? And the answer to this toxic jealousy in others is, the only thing that you can do is simply not to react to it. So the idea would be to be the kind of person you want to be. Simply, you want to be supportive or nurturing or encouraging, be that person. Don't let someone else's negativity, jealousy, anger, whatever it may be, don't let them infect you. Maintain your sense of balance, maintain your sense of equanimity. You remember we talked about being in the present moment. Be grateful for this person, because this person is guiding you towards better behavior. Be grateful for this person, because it's through the challenges of trying to find ways to deal with this that you will find yourself able to deal with a different situation that hasn't even occurred yet. But the challenges that they are putting in front of you every day will help you deal with that challenge that comes forward in the future. So the only thing I can suggest that you do is to do two things. One is realize you have no control over the behavior of others, but you do have influence over the behavior of others. You have positive influence as long as you are emotionally stable, emotionally centered, and emotionally balanced. As soon as you lose that emotional balance, you lose positive influence. So the idea would be here, work as hard as you can on the emotional balance, emotional intelligence. Use some of the daily 6 components we were talking about as far as willingness, quiet time, service, love, forgiveness, and use those components as you move forward. I think that you'll find that as you see them as an asset to strengthening your own personal emotional stability, you'll see them in a different light. I hope that helps. Toxic jealousy is a tough one. Another question?
Yes, we have another one. Let me try to unmute. The caller has raised a hand. We have Zamil Almani. Zamil, could you please introduce yourself and ask the question if you can hear us?
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Okay, I'm Zamil. Actually, the question is, to make it short, but it's tall. Actually, if you actually build your knowledge and build your skill and you have good attitude and you succeed for, let's say, 20 years, then at some point of time, you find the circumstances around you doesn't appreciate that, success, let's say. Then you decide to quit from this marathon, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Try to change something, try to build your own, do whatever you think. Then, unfortunately, you found things to succeed. You need to be either unethical or bribe some people, or such things.
Sure.
That increase the fear inside you from from the failure, from being rejected, especially that when you became, let's say, famous in the community, well known, etc.
Mm-hmm.
That add every day like a heavy load on you, okay, which is make you actually more and more like losing, let's say, the land that you're supposed to enrich. It's like getting much less than you expect.
Mm-hmm.
So how you go out of this? You can start. You are the horse, okay, but still have this reality, this facts surrounding you. It's not emotional. It's something there, but you can find something. But you need to give up some of your standards, some of your benchmark, let's say. Mm-hmm. How to deal with such situation?
Wow, that's a, let's see, Mr. Jafir, what do we have, 2 minutes left? So let me see if I can solve that problem in a couple of minutes, which I don't know that I can, but I'm sure that you'll have my email address. So if I can't get you a complete answer in this time, please feel free to email me and ask me a question or contact me in some way, and I'd be happy to work through a clearer, more thorough answer for you. But the thing that it comes to me with is that you simply have to understand. I worked in a company for many years. When I first got started in business, I was working for someone else, and I was learning the industry. And the person and I was becoming very successful. I'd worked my way up to the number 2 person in the organization, had a bright future ahead of me. And then I noticed that the individual was doing some very unethical things, buying things for the government and doing things that were quite underhanded with some bribes and some other things. And I had to sit and decide what it was that I was going to do. This was my livelihood. I had a home. I had 2 children. This was my 100% exclusive income. I had no other means of support. But for me, it was critically important that this not be a part of my life. The stress I was carrying home every day from the behavior that I was completely uncomfortable with, filtered out onto my children, filtered out onto my wife, the stress that I felt going to work affected my relationship with all of the other coworkers as well. I simply had to come to the decision that this was not a path I wanted to follow, and I left. I had no other plans other than to know this was not a path I could sustain. So I left. I sat back for about 2 weeks and said, well, I went into this business to learn this business. I've worked here for a few years. I understand this business now. I opened up a competitive business to his. Within 3 years, my business was twice the size of his. All of the good employees that had worked with me came to work for me because they felt the same way but were not able to express those fears. My business was filled with positive, motivated people. I felt dramatically more positive and motivated, feeling as if I was able to set myself on a more honest and straightforward path. The people who worked for me felt the same way, and that business went to become the second largest company of its type in the United States over a period of 10 years. So sometimes we just have to trust that we're being guided in a path, along a path, and if that's the belief that you have, then you have to go with what you feel personally is the best way to do it. And I can assure you that what was told to me originally was, this is the only way that you can do business with these people, is to do it this way. So when I opened my company and my business, I simply made a decision not to do business with those people. That way I was never put back in the situation again. And we simply found other clients elsewhere in the world that were eager and interested in working with us. That made us more powerful and positive. It made our employees much more engaged and supported, and it gave us a much bigger competitive advantage over the people that we were competing against.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Zamil Almani, for asking the question. We are really pressed on time, but we have a couple of more questions. So I request you to kindly write directly to John for any personal further questions that you have. But John, on a collective note, lots of comments and questions are there. People are asking about how to manage a career disappointments from emotional perspective.
Well, I think that you have to understand that a career disappointment, like any other disappointment in life, is there to teach us a lesson. You remember I said, be grateful for all things at all times. If it hadn't been for the underhanded behavior of my original boss, I would have never opened up my other business. If it hadn't been for the challenges of reduced budgets than a company that I was working in closing, I wouldn't have ever started on a new path. So the hard part in being in the midst of a career disappointment or a personal disappointment is that it's very difficult while you're in it. Maintain a sense of gratitude, maintain a sense of peace, maintain a sense of positive energy, and the idea will be you will notice as you move forward that your life is following a new path. If you dwell on the difficulties of the present, you'll never see the possibilities of the future. So you really have to practice these 6 components I talked about earlier. Take a look at the relationships that you're having with other people. Are the difficulties that you're having affecting the present moment and relate with others? Make the changes that make that positive. All right. If you're doing the right things, heading in the right direction, and have a positive attitude, you have a much more open perspective to see the opportunities that are coming ahead of us. I've seen too many people that are depressed and angry and frustrated because of something that's happened to them, whether it was fair or unfair. And opportunities come and they miss them, and opportunities go and they miss them. So be alert, be mindful, be awake to the moments that are ahead of you, and keep a positive attitude. I think you'll find that very quickly you'll realize that the changes that were made for a reason, and you'll be able to see and follow the positive path that becomes completely clear ahead of you.
Quite eloquent and very well summarized. So thank you very much. I really want to thank you, John, for a very, very interesting presentation. And again,
thank you, sir.
Yeah, really thank you on behalf of the Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship for this valuable information. that you have shared today, and thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. We apologize we could not take all the questions, but you have the contact details being illustrated on the screen right now of John, so feel free to write to him, or you could equally write to us at webinar@mile.org. We will be we really appreciate if you could also send us a brief testimonial or experience about this webinar with your photograph or even a video message. We'll be happy to further share and announce it on our social media platforms. So once again, thank you all. We are recording this webinar, which will be uploaded on Mile Community, so please stay tuned to webinar.mile.org. With that note, I would like to end this webinar. You all will be automatically dismissed out. So you all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much.